welcome to Launchpad 101. Just a brief overview before we kind of go into some case studies with our different companies. DigitalHealth.London Launchpad aims to support digital health companies who are that earlier stage in terms of developing their product and really helping you to focus your value proposition facing NHS and social care issues today. We've had a particular focus on earlier stage companies. We're really here to help you give you the knowledge and the confidence to launch your first or new product into the NHS and social care. We provide access to knowledge sharing events through 101s, through a program that's offered of 12 hours support, which comes over a 3-month period. The program itself is supported, as I've mentioned, through a series of workshops, giving that education element. We do bespoke one-to-ones, really with guiding different health consultants, so whether or not that's looking at IP, evidence generation, really focusing on your value proposition, how to access the market to both NHS organisations and social care. We also can provide key information about strategic partners, how to kind of really approach the different healthcare innovations. We are now running and we are launching our 4th cohort, which is really exciting. Throughout the 3 cohorts, we've supported over 20 companies to launch their first product to the NHS market. And we also offer a load of communication to really help share your messages. What I'd like to do is introduce Patrick from cohort 3 to kind of give his experience of the Launchpad program. So I'll hand over to you. He's from the company Joy, which is a social prescribing platform.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Yeah, great. So yeah, hello everyone. What I'll do is I'll introduce a little bit about like what Joy is, so you can frame it in your mind. And then I'm gonna talk about sort of what we learned on the program, how we found the experience as well. So yes, as mentioned, I am the founder of Joy, and Joy is focused on social prescribing. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically where a clinician, typically a GP, will prescribe or refer a patient of theirs into a local non-clinical intervention for their health. So that could be, for example, someone who's lonely or isolated getting plugged into a local group, or someone who may be having issues with like finances and debt. Rather than sort of the antidepressant, they go into someone at Citizens Advice who's going to help them fill out some forms and get some benefits, etc. Anyway, so I was part of the cohort 3, which was in 2020, so coming up to 2 years ago. And just what I found with this Launchpad is a couple of like real big benefits for it. The first thing is, sort of as an early stage company, you probably don't have like lots and lots of traction. And what's really, really helpful is that when you have that DigitalHealth.London is really good social proof for you at that early stage. So one of the challenges that we were facing as sort of a company, sort of trying to release a product, was it wasn't always so easy for us to do like co-creation, co-design, and do validation of some of our problems and pain points. What was really handy about the DigitalHealth.London, like being part of this program, is actually it's slightly easier to get in front of some of the people who, to test your hypotheses and your risky assumptions and understand if you're along the right lines, because it's quite easy obviously to go wrong there. So I think one of the key learnings was we were set up with a session, and our sort of hypothesis around sort of social prescribing and like what our business model and what our product set would need to be. Sort of that we weren't miles away, but some of the requirements for like our system, we hadn't really fully appreciated how important they would be. Namely for us, it was around like interoperability with the clinical systems, which is a pretty unpleasant thing probably to learn, that's going to be like a must-have requirement, because those things are quite tough to do. But anyway, it was a handy thing for us to be able to learn that early on, that we are really going to need to integrate with the clinical systems in order to be successful. Now, I'm sure people on the call probably aren't necessarily doing something in primary care or social prescribing, but the main advantage here is that you'll be able to speak to important people that eventually you're going to try and sell to, and understand like what the must-have requirements are for the product that you're planning to release. So that's one of the main things there. A second learning that I had, which was probably like a less fun learning, I suppose, as well, was around just how difficult it is to be commercially successful when your buyer or when your customer is sort of in the NHS. So we had some assumptions about how we might sort of scale our product going forward, and I think the timelines on those were a bit punchy. And then there were some workshops as well where we were able to hear from other companies that were ahead of us in their maturity and understand about actually how long it takes to actually get those deals, and the sales cycle in this space is very long, and the process involved. So that was another key learning as well that we picked up from it, was just like how we're actually going to commercialize this, and there's all of the tricky parts involved in that. And again, I wouldn't say that it's sort of helped with any specific sort of deals that we've done subsequently, but it helped us to like frame and understand and do our business plan ultimately, and put some sort of accurate revenue lines into our, well, we did a fundraise, so we needed obviously the assumptions about how much we'd be doing by when, and we were able to sort of make sure we weren't over committing or promising things that were undeliverable as well. So that was like a really very handy sort of learning there too. We also sort of found that because we're working in a regulatory sector, probably the third thing to sort of talk about is like what the actual support looks like. So there's some one-on-one support, and you'll get connected into people who are relevant in your area. So for us, it's primary care, so we'd speak to some people in primary care and some potential users and people and decision makers in that space. The other thing was around, there were just some general must-haves, I suppose, if you're looking to release a product into this space, because it's obviously regulated. So the workshops, and I think they are kind of like 101s, like, I don't know, clinical safety 101, or there'll be a data protection or something like that 101. They are a good starting point to understand like what it is that you're going to have to do in order to launch your product with NHS users and with real patients, etc. So there were some, there were just the classic ones around like data protection, but it's handy because you're able to get under the skin and specify, what is the certificate that we need, what are the what are the requirements that are must have, and what are some of the things that are sort of nice to have as well. So those are probably some of the main things there. I'd say, generally speaking, as well as like the formal program, you'll get a navigator as well, and so Yasmin was our navigator, and that's actually very handy for sort of tailoring and tapping into the wider DigitalHealth.London network, I suppose, or ecosystem of support. So a few things that we were doing, so obviously building out the product, and so being able to test assumptions with users and influencers and decision makers for our in our category. Secondly, we were doing some fundraising as well, and so we're able to be connected in with some other people. So had a session with someone who that completely destroyed our pitch deck and business plan as well. Again, good to come from someone who's not doing it and they're not looking at your pitch deck or whatever in the interest of investing, but more interested in sort of helping you make your next iteration of your business plan and your pitch deck more believable. So they helped us with those specific milestones that we as a company were like working on with the product, and also in terms of like investment as well. And again, I'd say sort of to manage expectations, through that process or through the program, what we've managed to do is we're able to have a better product because we had more input from users and in the market, I suppose, and we had a slightly better value proposition for investors because we were able to articulate what we're doing in a better way. But still, like, the emphasis is very much on us, so nothing gets handed to you on a silver plate. You might have some introductions and some sessions, but that's not going to lead to a sale necessarily, or it's not going to lead to you finding an investor sector. It's sort of just supporting, yes, it's the support for you on your journey and building out what you're building too. So I'd say, yeah, just sort of summarize there for us, really good access to customers and users of our tool, which has helped us to nail our value proposition. Good expectation management on what it actually takes to commercialize your product, which, as I'm sure you would know by now, is incredibly difficult. If your buyer is the NHS, it just takes a long time. It's definitely possible, it just takes a while. And then, yeah, finally, just that tailored support through your Navigator, which are going to help you work on your business priorities. Ours was around product development and a bit of investment raising. And so those priorities, we were able to, make progress against those during that program. So those are the main things. And then perhaps as well, just that sort of social proof, the comms that come along with DigitalHealth.London as well, just help you to look credible, which I think if you're a very early stage can be tricky to show that you're credible to people and that they should work with you on your product development process or whatnot. So probably land there, if that's okay.
That's perfect. Thanks so much, Patrick. So lovely to hear how much you've actually got out of the programme, kind of reflecting on that. Yeah, and I think that's something else to highlight. As part of being on the Launchpad, you will have a dedicated navigator to really kind of coach and mentor you through kind of the programme and make sure that you get that really dedicated, bespoke 12 hours throughout the programme to really help support, give that confidence to have those conversations with the NHS. We are really here to help support and broker relationships to different organisations. And obviously we can't guarantee the sale, as Patrick has said, but we are really here to help support and kind of introduce you where possible. Going on to our second case study, so I'm going to introduce Marianne from Dtac, who was on cohort 2. I will hand over to you, Marianne.
Hello. Can you hear me? Yes. So thank you, Yasmin, for inviting me to speak about the Launchpad here today, because I think that was a great program for us, like for Dtac in general. I would probably say like few things very similar to what Patrick said, but at the same time, because the Launchpad program is a bespoke program where like the main value is the one-to-ones. We probably had like a different program than what Patrick described it. So I am the Chief Medical Officer and co-founder of Dtac, and we are developing a clinical reasoning platform for allied healthcare professionals and advanced practitioners, so we can support them with the initial parts of the clinical assessment before the patient sees the doctors. So our platform is a bit of triage and clinical support, decision support too, for the wider healthcare community that are not only for doctors. And in 2019, when we joined the program, we were pivoting from the medical educational side because we built the Dtac app until 2019 that was focused on teaching people how to do the diagnosis, what is the clinical reasoning behind it. And in 2019, we decided that it would have a bigger impact if it was used and implemented in a clinical setting. So when we joined the Launchpad, it was exactly at that moment, and I think it was a perfect fit for what we are looking for. We were lucky to have Yasmin as our navigator, and she helped us define which experts would be the most appropriate for that time, for that period where we are transitioning from medical education to the clinical setting. And I think it was really good, and it was very important to the place where we are today. So we had discussions with some NHS experts to define our value proposition better. From that conversations, we defined which functionalities we had to add to the platform to be useful in the clinical setting. We learned about the regulations because that would be different as well. And I think the other thing that was really good is because it's a 3 months program, So you need to show something by the end of the 3 months. And I think that everyone that's working with digital technologies knows that every founder thinks that the product is not ready or is not good enough. And we're always building on functionalities on top of functionalities. So it was good to have like this 3 months deadline to have something that we could launch and put in the market. So yes, that was very good. And I think that besides the one-to-one meetings with the experts that your navigator will define with you which ones is better for the moment that you're at. The program had like great workshops as well in like general and different topics. For example, marketing, social media. You know, they reviewed our website and helped us like, you know, deliver the messaging better. So I think it's a really, really good program for early stage companies or companies that are changing the proposition and want to understand the NHS space a bit better and want to get like more contacts and talk to people just to define exactly what do you want to develop for your product. Yes, so I think it was great. And I can happily say that the program didn't finish after the 3 months. We established all contacts within the DigitalHealth.London team. And every time that we needed something from them, even after the program, we still had the support from the team, which was really good for us as well. And so the Launchpad was perfect for that period where we are developing a value proposition and changing our proposition. And now I can clearly see how that integrates into the Launchpad or into the DigitalHealth.London Accelerator. So we did the Launchpad in 2019, and now we are in the DigitalLondon Accelerator. And I think the two programs really integrate each other from an early stage to a little bit more advanced into the NHS very difficult pathway. I think that was it, Yasmin. So if anyone has any questions for me, I'm free to answer them.
Fantastic, thanks, Marianne. Yeah, just to kind of add to that, so we do offer the flagship program, which is the Accelerator. I will caveat it by saying that just because you go onto the Launchpad program doesn't necessarily guarantee you a spot on the Accelerator program, but they are designed for two different levels of company, depending on how advanced you are. So yeah, Launchpad is really about giving you the knowledge and understanding to kind of launch your first product or to change your value proposition, as Marianne said, you know, as you're changing different environments. And the Accelerator is really to support companies that are further ahead with the spread and adoption. Again, can't guarantee any brokering, can't guarantee any sales, but we certainly do that support, and they are different programs. I'm now going to hand over to the new Launchpad lead, over to Christina, and we can open up the floor to some questions. Over to you, Christina.
Hi everyone, I'm a new navigator, so I'll be working on the Launchpad programme. So I'm just going through some questions and answers, some questions that we got through Eventbrite. And there's one question around any ongoing support following the 3-month programme. Don't know, Yasmin, if you might be able to pick that one up.
Yes. So yes, we offer an alumni package. We are, as a wider team, always happy to answer questions, have one-to-one sessions with the wider team to kind of talk about that. The support doesn't end. I will particularly say, because I know we've got some comms team on there, that we are always willing to support and share kind of exciting news stories for the different SMEs that we work with, whether or not that's looking at different blogs or articles, sharing items across our kind of social media patches. But yeah, if there's any kind of queries that come through, if you want to talk through any kind of issues once you've finished the program, we are more than happy to support. May not be the dedicated navigator that you work with whilst you're on the program, but the team as itself will always be there to support. Just probably not as intense when you have 3 months.
Yes, yes.
Brilliant. And can you be on the Launchpad and Clinical Entrepreneurship programme at the same time?
Yes, you can. That's not something that we've come across yet, but yes, you can certainly be on the Launchpad and the clinical entrepreneurship at the same time. You can't be on the Launchpad and the Accelerator, our Accelerator, at the same time, but otherwise there's no other restrictions.
Do you support medtech companies?
Shall I jump in there again? We do support medtech companies as long as there is that digital component. So we are DigitalHealth.London. Our main focus is supporting companies that have software digital within NHS and social care. Katja, our program manager, I don't know if there's anything you want to add there?
No, just as long as we've got something digital as part of that medtech offer, happy to support you.
And Katja, there were quite a few questions on the Eventbrite around eligibility and geographical locations. We know that's related to the ERDF. Would you mind, and there've been a few emails coming through as well around geography and eligibility for the programme. Do you mind answering that and sort of giving some explanation?
Sure. Is there a specific question or just kind of
just generally
London-based?
London-based and sort of the reasons why and kind of what the criteria is that would be considered London-based to get onto the programme and be accepted?
Fantastic, thanks. Yes, so as Christina mentioned, we are part funded by the European Regional Development Fund, and as part of that funding, the companies that we support, particularly on the Launchpad, have to have a London address and be doing business in London. So that is a requirement for you to apply for the program. Some companies have multiple offices. That's okay. As long as you have an office in London, you're able to provide that address. That works. And there just has to be that formal presence in London. Can only have one staff member. Doesn't have to have an entire team. But we have to be able to obviously prove that address as part of our funding. The other additional criteria, obviously, to focus on is SME eligibility. So you do need to obviously tick that box in terms of not just size and revenue, but particularly not being a subsidiary of a larger company. So if you are a subsidiary, the larger company can apply to be on the Launchpad, but they then still have to meet the criteria of being considered a small to medium enterprise. So those are the key to criteria for eligibility outside of obviously being a digital product and really wanting to be part of this program for the reason to launch something to the NHS market.
Brilliant. And there has been another question around how many companies are we onboarding onto Launchpad, and that number is 8. So and there has been some questions around the application process. So our applications are open from Monday, and for 2 weeks that takes us until the 13th of February. Then we do some shortlisting, and interview process will be between the 23rd and 25th of February, with the actual programme start date being the 14th of March. And there was just another question around when do the applications for Accelerator open?
I'm happy to jump in there.
Yeah.
And there's a follow-up question to my London-based address. I'll address both those. So we have just launched the cohort 6 of the Accelerator. Unlike the Launchpad, which is 3 months, the Accelerator is 12 months. So it is a slightly longer wait until those applications open again. Realistically, that'll open towards the end of this year, with the cohort being supported kind of towards the end of Q1 next year. It's a bit of a longer wait there, but if you sign up to a newsletter or follow us on Twitter, that's always the first place we announce when new cohorts are starting for any of the programs that we offer, but it is a little bit of a longer wait. And then in terms of Nick's question around saying that Accelerator wasn't so London limited. Yes, so we have some additional funding from wider partners, and we use that funding to support a very small number of companies on the Accelerator program, which are later stage companies focused on spread and adoption, who are not necessarily, not London based, but not necessarily UK based. So for the last 2 cohorts, we've been supporting 3 cohorts now. I'm losing track of how long I've been here. For the last 3 cohorts, we've now been supporting a very select few international companies. So that's very specific to the Accelerator program, just because those companies are later stage, and the funders who are happy to fund that part of our program are focused on that sprint adoption type company.
And do we select pre-revenue or pre-traction startups?
Yes. No concerns about pre-revenue. Pre-traction's also totally fine, but you do need to have a minimum viable product. So ideally, you shouldn't be joining the Launchpad just at idea phase, and you need to have something that we can put you in front of people to get feedback on, get thoughts, that type of thing. So yes to both, but you do need to have something tangible already built.
And on a practical note, I don't know whether this might be a question for Vaish or Megan. Can we supply a document with the application questions contained in the type form document?
I am not sure on that.
We can definitely do that. We can post something on, if you follow us on Twitter or LinkedIn, we can post something on there. If not, you know, you can easily go through, look at them, and then come back later and submit them. But yeah, I think we do encourage people to copy over and answer them outside of the type form first, and then go back and fill it in. So we'll look to share something on that.
Brilliant. And on the timeline of adoption, would a 3-month to launch timeline account for delays that might be caused by ethics and other delays?
Really good question. So the program itself is 12 hours over the 3 months, with the idea that we would support a launch within that on the 3rd or 4th month of being within the program. There is a bit about kind of looking at if there are particular delays to you launching your product, COVID potentially being one of them. We did have some delays with cohort 2, but ideally you need to be launching within that 3 months in order to fit with our program. I don't know if they want to kind of come on and talk about the ethics element in more detail and kind of clarify that a bit. I'm not entirely sure I know what that means.
Okay.
Sorry, I did ask the question, actually. I was going to follow up on that, actually.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks for taking the question. Just as a follow-up, I guess, do you actually work with the startups to help deal with those possible delays? So how to reduce the risk of things like ethics slowing down the adoption or the launch date?
Yes, certainly. As part of the program, we can organise kind of one-to-ones with experts. We can work with you either directly as your navigator, kind of working through some of those issues and coming up with a plan. And where we've got links to different experts to kind of talk about that, we can also again support with that, whether it's through kind of our workshops, webinars, kind of as a more general topic if a lot of companies are having similar issues, or on that kind of one-to-one bespoke basis. If you're also kind of working with an individual organisation, we can support kind of talking through some of those barriers with the company and that organisation as well if there are issues there.
That's great, thank you. Maybe while I'm on the call, just a second question, either to the past cohort members or the program managers. I wonder about, you talk about the advice that the companies get about, for example, challenging their assumptions and their business model and commercial plans. Maybe if there's something tangible to discuss about how to resolve a very strong difference of opinion that might grow out of those conversations, and how they've been resolved to go forward and have a coherent plan that there is a consensus in at least the company side, maybe not on both sides of the discussion.
Great question. Marianne, I don't know if you want to pop on. I know we didn't have any kind of big issues with your particular products, but I don't know if there's any kind of advice that you want to offer where we have had kind of some of those more challenging conversations when looking at your products and moving from your education side actually into kind of working in the NHS as part of a pathway.
Well, yeah, we didn't have any difficult decisions to make, but I think that, you know, it's always the final decision is up for the company to decide which way you're taking, you're going forward. So the one-to-one meetings, they are advisors, and you know, sometimes we have different opinions even from experts. So it will be, the decision will be from you to decide which pathway you want to take, if you prefer to go with your opinion or with the expert's opinion. And you can always like talk to different people to actually validate both ideas. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have any like experience like that would be even similar to that, but I think that that's the approach that would be taken if it was on my side.
Thank you.
I think I'll caveat that by also saying, you know, we are here to support. So if you do get advice that the company doesn't necessarily agree with, we will still support you and kind of work through that kind of pathway and support those decisions. We are here as very much that education and advisory piece. There's always going to be different opinions. And, you know, as Marianne said, we will, you know, talk to lots of different people and get both sides of kind of the coin. And kind of make sure that you're supported with whatever decisions the company makes. We are here as advisory. We would never tell you kind of a definitive one way or the other, which way the company's direction is going to go.
Brilliant, thank you.
And there's a really good question actually, and I've actually had an email with a similar question. So it's from Alan McKay. I'm unclear if our product is eligible. We have something that's being used and paid for by the NHS. Will this preclude our involvement in Launchpad? So I've also had a similar question via email. So I was just wondering if the product is already being used by the NHS, even in a pilot or just within one service, does that preclude them from applying to Launchpad?
It depends if you're planning to add any additional sections to the product that you provide. So the way that it currently is, yes. It sounds like if you have no plans to launch additional offerings to that current product offer, you're probably better suited for the accelerator. So kind of waiting a bit later for those applications to open and using the accelerator program to help with your spread and adoption. But if there are, if you're already live with part of a product, or what you consider at this point a full product, but you're launching additional aspects to that, you will still qualify for Launchpad. So as long as it's something that is not currently being used, paid for, and is new to both your company and the market out there, but it can just be an element to what you already offer. It doesn't have to be a full product from start to finish.
Brilliant.
I have to clarify that more if I have more detail on the actual product.
Just because one of the companies that actually emailed me, they couldn't make this webinar, and basically they've got a product that is within, like, on a pilot, part of research, not necessarily commissioned other than one smaller service, but if they were then to add in, say, a sleep aspect of their product, so it's a general well-being product, if they add, say, something like a sleep module or advice around sleep, would that count as like an additional element of the product that would then be suitable for Launchpad?
Yes.
Perfect.
Easy answer.
Thank you.
I can even add to that, because in our case, we had the platform, it was built, but because we wanted to enter in the clinical setting, we had to adapt the platform for the clinical setting. So for the Launchpads, we created a new functionality inside our platform that was called the medical actions. And that was what we developed in the 3 months. So it wasn't like the platform from zero in 3 months. It was this functionality that we created with the support of the Launchpad program. And we presented that as in the launch day.
Perfect. And just a couple of follow-up questions around that from Douglas Barrett. We are about to start a pilot with the NHS. Do we still qualify to join? Oh, you're muted, Katya.
Grey area is probably the honest answer. Douglas, maybe you and I can have a conversation offline just to get a sense of how far along that is. Might be easier to give a more specific answer to that.
Yeah.
Okay. are there any particular requirements on size of team and the way the MVP product has been built? I.e., can an individual founder with a product built using self-build digital products, not via developers, possibly join?
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, the only caveat we would say about this, a smaller company joining, is that you actually have the time and the resource to be able to join the different events and the one-to-ones. So part of the kind of requirement is that you complete your 12 hours, we have sign-in sheets kind of to make sure that you get that level of support throughout the 3-month program. So as long as you've got the time, and we can organise some of those one-to-ones kind of around your diary, but where we do have the set program kind of webinars, so whether we're looking at doing workshops around evidence generation or looking at value proposition, kind of IG, those are kind of set and we've got dates already in the diary. So the only kind of requirement is that you, or if you're slightly larger, a team member can attend. And then in terms of how the product's built, if you've got external developers or you've done it yourself, that's again absolutely fine. There's no kind of caveat. Like I say, the only caveat we have in terms of the type of product is that it is focused on NHS or social care, and that it's got a digital component to it. We had for cohort 2, we actually had a person that was part-time on their companies. It was one person, he had another full-time job, so his working time equivalent was 0.5. A really kind of nice successful moment for that particular company was when he could leave his other job and kind of work full-time on the product. So yeah, the only caveat is that you've got enough time and resource to attend the different one-to-ones or webinars, so workshops, etc.
Okay, thanks, Yasmin. There's another question. If we have a demonstrator, not an MVP, do we qualify? Our platform needs accreditation before the NHS can adopt it. So it's not an MVP that can be put in prospect hands, only a demo that can be shown. Is it too early for this programme?
I would probably say yes, it is a bit too early. Because as part of the programme, we would be looking to support you to actually launch that product into the NHS within the 3 NHS or social care within that 3-month, potentially with a kind of a couple of weeks the other side to kind of get to do that level of support. Because of Launchpad and the way that it runs 3 months, we also look at doing and building out a series of different cohorts throughout the year. So it might be that you're too early stage now, but when we do another launch for cohort 5, I think, of the Launchpad. Gosh, that's strange to say. But when we do, so it might be that it might be more appropriate to apply for a kind of a later stage cohort for that particular product.
And actually for the next cohort, you don't have to wait a year. That's coming later on in the year, so it'd be sort of autumn time.
Yeah, so we're looking to run 2 cohorts this year, just for everyone to know.
Are there any face-to-face interactions planned for Launchpad?
We're looking to do a hybrid version, so where appropriate, meetings can be face-to-face, but we're also kind of we very much planned with different workshops and one-to-ones to be done virtually, depending on how the different environments kind of change throughout the next kind of few months. So it'd be hybrid would be kind of the main role. It also depends on kind of who you're having your one-to-ones with and kind of what their approach is. So it might be that they are open to face-to-face meetings, and that can be organised kind of through the programme as well.
And there was another question in the Eventbrite around securing UK partner for clinical studies, and I guess that comes under our sort of evidence generation. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Yasmin?
Yes.
In terms of our brokering and partnerships.
Yes. So as we kind of already said and alluded to, we can't promise any kind of sales or guarantee any kind of relationships. We are here to help broker. One of the big key aspects that we do support with the Launchpad is your evidence generation and looking kind of what gaps you may have. We can offer one-to-ones to kind of talk through different proposals and kind of to help build out your kind of evidence base for your particular products. The other thing that we've also got under our digital health umbrella is what we call the Generator programme, where we work with academia and innovators to kind of bridge that gap. So again, we can put the support in to help find kind of if there are particular key academics and partners to support that. We can't guarantee anything, unfortunately, but we will definitely be there to support and help broker some of those relationships kind of across the field, whether or not that's directly with academic units or looking kind of more at different potential pilot sites. But I will caveat, we can't guarantee anything, but we will do our best to support and broker those relationships as we go through the programme.
There was another question just in the Eventbrite around what's offered, and I think this has been covered by Yasmin and the SMEs, but just to sort of go through the sort of formal workshops that we've been diarising around pitching, so pitching workshop, evidence generation, a communications workshop, a compliance workshop, so that involves sort of the Dtac and IG, and also sort of business and NHS funding and structure, and intellectual property. So those are the sort of workshops that we've got lined up, and then obviously then there'll be one-to-one sessions as well. And obviously any questions, then pop them in the chat.
I think it's also worth adding, so we do put those workshops on throughout the programme. Those workshops have been designed and planned because with the input of our previous cohorts, because those are kind of the key knowledge elements that we feel that SMEs of all stages, particularly the earlier stage ones that are kind of applying for Launchpad, really need to give that knowledge basis. But you will have an introductory meeting with the Navigator to really plan what your bespoke elements will be, whether or not that's focusing on directly your business case, pathway mapping to see where your products may fit best within the NHS or social care system. So whilst we do have that kind of core element of these are the really key knowledge bases that we do, and that's how we do the workshops, you still have those kind of one-to-ones, and that is planned out within the first week or two of you joining the programme, to kind of really kind of work out what your key gaps are and where you need that support to be able to launch your first product.
I'm not sure if that's answered your question, Jeff, but Jeff's just popped in another question around why offer a Dtac workshop if we won't accept platforms that need Dtac for NHS use, because all such platforms must enter the programme with Dtac approval.
So you don't necessarily need your Dtac fully completed to apply for the programme. You need to have an MVP that's working. We support the education of what you need to do for your Dtac compliance. So we can work with you and kind of looking at other regulations within the NHS and social care. But yeah, you don't have to have fully Dtac compliant in order to apply.
And another question, I presume that says, are we able to review a submitted application to check for errors?
I've just had a look, and I don't think you can edit your submitted type form application. So if you have made a mistake, I'd suggest submitting another application form. Hope that helps.
And can we expand what we mean by launch in the NHS? Does it need to be revenue generating?
I'll start answering that question. So no, it doesn't need to be evidence generating. It's that the launch of the NHS is that you're ready and feel confident that you can start having those conversations to potentially make a sale, to start pilots, to broker kind of those further relationships. Katya, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
No, nothing to add. It doesn't have to be revenue generating. It's about being in a position where if you had a conversation on Monday with someone within the NHS and they said, I'd like to go live today, you have that ability that the product is finished and the product is out there, it's known about, it's on your website. There's been some form of like communication around launching that product and telling essentially the outside world this is available and ready to pilot/purchase. But no, it doesn't need to be revenue generating.
And I think we've, if you've submitted your application form and you need to amend it, yeah, so that's from Vaish. I think we've covered this already throughout the sort of webinar, but there were some sort of questions around success stories. Yasmin, I don't know if you have any sort of focus. Obviously, you led on Launchpad for you know, the cohorts that have the past cohorts. I don't know if there's any more success stories you want to share with the audience.
So yeah, I might hand over kind of to Marianne, because she can really kind of demonstrate that. But yeah, we've had a variety of different success stories where we've had research kind of generation started based on broken relationships. Some of the companies that have been on the programme have gone on and made sales in different NHS organisations. So whether it's within London, but across. Yeah, Marianne, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to demonstrate from the DemDX perspective from the time you were with on the Launchpad.
Yes, definitely. So the product that we start developing with the Launchpad, sometime after it, we closed our first commercial relationship that was with Moorfields Eye Hospital. They're still using it for triaging patients in the pediatric A&E. We had built on that product, and after that we applied and we were successful with like several grants, including the AI and the NIHR AI Awards. So we are continuing building on this product that we initially planned it with the help of the Launchpad. So for us, it was a very successful outcome.
Lovely, thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions that you want to, in particular, are there any questions directed at Marianne, who's been through the programme while she's here?
You can just unmute as well if you feel more comfortable doing that.
Hi, I'm Shane from Thriving AI. Thank you for that presentation. Marianne, could you perhaps tell me the top 3 benefits that you saw from joining the Launchpad?
Well, for me, it was mainly the one-to-one meetings with different experts, and that was all tailored to what we are looking for. Because at that point, we were trying to define our value proposition and how we would also test it in the NHS to prove impact. So I think that was the most valuable thing for us, was actually defining with the experts what would be your message, what would be your main functionalities, and how we would bring impact for the NHS.
Terrific, that's helpful, thank you.
There's another question in the chat. So what we'd like to see demonstrated in particular applications. I think being able to define what your product does, so that's really clear, and kind of what the problem you're trying to solve with your particular product. I think being quite clear what you want to get out of the program. So what are your kind of key 3 values that you want to kind of get out of it? Whether or not that's looking at evidence generation, if it's looking at kind of your value proposition, where you might sit in a pathway. So just being very clear about what your product does, what the problem that you're trying to solve, and actually what you want to get out of the program would be kind of the key things to demonstrate in applications.
Can we help with securing grants?
So we can help support with the kind of reviewing grants, but we can't guarantee that we can secure any. But we do have a series of experts and kind of with our, that work with DigitalHealth.London to help review, bounce ideas off, etc. But yeah, if there are any other questions following this webinar, please feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to get emails. Please do look at our FAQs on our website for further details. But yeah, please reach out with any kind of other questions.